Hey everyone, and welcome back to the Firefighters podcast, where we seek to develop, inspire, and motivate the world of the emergency services operator through a series of wide-ranging conversations. Now, before we go any further, just hit that rate, follow, or subscribe button on whatever platform you're listening to. It's a key performance indicator for us and helps us reach even more people. Now, here's what we've got for you today. In today's episode, we go deep into the roots of our profession, not just the fires we fight today, but also the legacy we stand on. Alan House is one of those rare figures who's both lived the history and devoted his life to preserving it. A firefighter who began his journey in the 1960s, he rose through the ranks in Hampshire Fire and Rescue and has since become a leading voice in keeping the story of British fire service alive. He now serves as part of the Firefighters Memorial Trust, an organisation that records and honours everyone in our service who's died in the line of duty. Not just firefighters in uniform, but every individual who gave their life while serving their community. In the episode, we talk about why that matters, why remembrance isn't just nostalgia, but accountability. We'll look at how the fire service's history stretches back centuries, from the insurance brigades of the 1700s to the chaos of the Blitz, the creation of the National Fire Service in 1941, and the decades that followed. Alan's work, amongst many others, reminds us that every name in the Trust records carries a lesson, technical, cultural, and ultimately human. In this conversation, we dig into the value of remembering, the danger of rewriting history to suit today's comfort zones, and how understanding where we've been helps us lead better today. We talk sirens in the living rooms, we talk fire watchers on rooftops during the Blitz, the evolution of national standards and the discipline of learning through experience rather than erasing it. As Alan says, if we don't do it, nobody else will. Local memories fade, but our duty to remember them should never. This episode isn't just about legacy, leadership, or learning from the past, so the next generation of firefighters doesn't repeat the same mistakes. It's about the people actually behind the plaques, the families, the men, the women who ran towards danger before we did. It's my pleasure to introduce Alan House, and I'll see you on the other side. What is the Firefighters Memorial Trust?
It's a trust that's been set up to record, firstly, and then remember, pay tribute to anybody in the fire service who has died in the course of their duties. And I try to not use the word firefighters because we have people in our records who are not necessarily firefighters. A classic example would be a non-uniformed photographer who died as a result of an explosion. He happened to be an ex-sub-officer in the service, but he was employed as a civilian photographer. And so it's not just about firefighters as a group name. And it's really about, look, if we don't do it, nobody else is doing it. And perhaps they're remembered locally, but they're not being remembered nationally. And as local memory fades, sadly, so too does that memory from of a local death. So we want to try and keep it very much there on a daily basis, that people understand that the fire service is a profession where people give their lives.
So does this outdate the work that the Fire Brigade Union does? Because I want to keep our conversation for the context of everyone that is brand new to the fire service, thinking of coming into it, and also the general public that listen in as well. Like, how does that differ from the union? Does this predate it? I'm not saying that we shouldn't have more and more organizations focusing on what is a very, very pertinent part of our history, but some people might go there and believe that that is the place for the records. Because that's what, when I went to the Arboretum recently and people said, oh yeah, I read about that through the union. I'm like, yeah, the union promote it. And again, there are other unions other than just the FBU. But this is, I thought this predated that.
It absolutely does predate it. Now, we work very, very closely with the FBU. In fact, we provide them with a lot of the information that they use, or they come to me for verification. So their red plaque scheme, which is a great scheme, has got some pretty tight rules about it, and is very much based on local initiative and fundraising and what goes on there. So we are very much aware of the scheme, and in our Book of Remembrance there are links across to their listing for the red plaque. So we work together. Without doubt, the FBU supports what we do very strongly. and we've been fortunate to get grants from their lottery fund, for instance.
Okay.
We work very closely with the FBU, but it is a separate thing, and we do predate the work that we're doing predates the FBU's.
Because there's a lot of places where the records only seem to go back to like the 70s, like 1978, 77, something like that. Whereas I think your records go way back further than that. I was looking at some of the government websites, and also I think the unions, they've got like 120 something, 122 listed. I think it only goes back to like 78, isn't it? But obviously the Fire and Rescue Service has been around far longer than that.
Yeah, we go back to the 1720s. When there were no organised fire brigades as such, not local authority. They were all part of the insurance companies, which of course fell out of the Great Fire of London, 1666.
We did an episode about it recently, mate, and you know what? I absolutely loved doing that and digging through ancient Rome to different municipal fire services into Braidwood and Massey Shore and how the insurance element of it evolved. And it is fascinating. And this is why I was so excited for our conversation, because I always think if you don't know where you've been, how do you know where you're going? I think history is so important, especially to sectors like us, the police, the military, because it's part of our DNA. And this thing was here long before us. It'll be here long after us. We're just custodians of it, and we all try and leave it better than we found it. I'm not sure many people, I'm not sure everyone can able to stamp that on their career, because unlike yourself, like you've clearly still got a burning passion for this. Before we start recording today, you said like over the weekend you've been working on fire engines and doing them up and getting them ready for some of the duties that you support with the Memorial Trust and stuff like that. But why do you think it's so important for us to keep recognizing this history? Yes, it's important for the families. Yes, it's important for the services, but it must be more than that, I'd have thought.
Yeah, I think it's very important to remember the history generally. If you don't know what's gone on in the past, how can you push forward for the future? And I think history tells us some of the mistakes that have been made too, don't they? So there's mistakes that made, and generally speaking, if you're talking about the death of somebody doing their role, there are lessons going to be learned from that, hopefully, and there are going to be changes made, hopefully. But I think there are always lessons.
Always lessons, 100%.
With regard to general history, if we're not careful, if we don't know the history, there's a danger of reinventing the wheel sometimes. And trying out things that have been done before.
There's so much there that I can, we could talk about that for an hour. I often say that sometimes we need to remember more than we need to learn, because, even just in like fire behavior, we do a lot of stuff on fire behavior. Some of the Dan Stevens stuff, Paul Grimwood stuff, these lessons have been learnt before. We just seem to have forgot them. And that's why I think, the purpose of our conversation today, the work we do with the Firefighters Charity, we need to remember that there's a massive turnover of staff in the UK Fire and Rescue Service at the minute. Something like 60% of the staff in a 10-year period, or maybe less, will turn over in the UK Fire and Rescue Service, just because we're at that sort of 35, 40-year career cycle. And we need to remember, even for the union, that these things need to remain incredibly relevant. And we can't just assume, everyone knows who we are. What are you talking about? We don't need to do any promotion. I'm like, yes, you do. It's not promotion. It's about remembering these things, especially like the episodes that we do around the debriefs. So remarkably popular, because whilst history doesn't necessarily always repeat itself, it certainly does rhyme. And I imagine you have read many a debrief and, line of duty death report and gone, that rhymes. Do you know what I mean? And that's not to say, stupid person, stupid firefighter, didn't know what they're doing, incompetent. It's never to say that, but it's to go, what part did we as a sector have to play in this, and what do we need to push hard with? The big ones get legislative changes or policy changes, or, we bring out echo boards or guidelines, or, there's a health and safety executive, legislative change that happens. But so many of the times when we want to get into what went wrong, it's very difficult, because people can sometimes see that overly curious approach to be one of accusation that the individual has done something wrong. So how do you sort of square that circle in your mind when you see some of the fatalities, some of the losses that you see across your career and now still working in the sector, very much so with the Memorial Trust?
Yeah, I think it's about remembering, but I think it's also about reminding. I
Okay.
mean, we need to be reminded of things that have happened before.
Hmm.
I think in today's society, I think we've become um, a race that's become uh, almost fearful of litigation rather than the
Hmm.
truth.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes there are instruments that work against us. You know, the data protection, in particular,
Hmm.
frustrates me no end when I'm doing research. Um,
Yes.
uh,
Me too.
I understand the good of it, but it's also, I think it's destroying history.
Mm.
Um, our way that we digitize everything
Hmm.
worries me. As a fire service researcher generally, but in particular for the trust, I can very often go to incredibly well written, very full reports and papers where a great deal of detail is put there, and you can sit and you can study this. I'm not so sure today we are keeping the records or making them accessible to people to be
No.
able to learn and move forward. So I think we've changed, and there's lots of great things that have come about from the changes.
Hmm.
Uh, there was a time in the British Fire Service when, and I'm being a bit critical here, where there was throw out history. We
Okay.
don't want to be reminded of the past. I was once told that the photographs of fires were seen to be a failure. They're
Mm.
a failure because the fire should have been prevented in the first place, was the answer given to me. And I just can't sign up to that, to be honest with you. Accidents will happen, fires will happen,
Yeah.
no matter what we do to prevent them.
Humans
Um,
are beautifully imperfect beings. And also in today's distractible world and the mental load that's placed on general members of society and financial stresses and life stresses, they're gonna make mistakes. And that's okay, because that's why the fire service was invented. It is that big insurance policy for the imperfectness of us as human beings. And that includes us. That includes us as members of society that just so happen to work in the emergency services of that same society.
yeah, but then I think if you add on to that and you say, like, take all those photographs off the wall or that room, those are past failures we're displaying here. Then you're destroying history. You're destroying some of the an instrument to remind people of
Hmm.
what can happen. But that happened. There were a lot of headquarters around the country and stations where
Oh, yeah.
the new
Seen it on
broom
my own.
came in and destroyed it all. That's sad because in that picture of that building on fire, where there was a lot of fire engines and a lot of people going about their task to fight the fire. You've got people that were putting their lives at risk, who were protecting the community. There's a story within the picture that reminds people that this is, even if it's historical, even if it was something that was taken in 1958 or whatever random date I come up with. It is something that those people then were facing those risks just as they are today, and it's a tribute to and a reminder of. Okay,
Mm.
we can't live in a museum. I accept that. We can't live in a place like that, but we can usefully include history uh, in, I think, today's service, because I think it instills a certain amount of pride as well and tradition.
Firefighters, police officers, and first responders are now stepping into environments wired with more high voltage than ever before. Everything from electric vehicles to solar panels feeding direct current through compromised structures, overhead power lines, and illicit drugs factories with improvised lethal bypasses. Any single strike in the wrong place in this type of environment can turn things fatal very quickly, and that is exactly why we've partnered with Jafco. You already know who Jafco are. They have been relied upon for decades for sturdy, get the job done equipment, and they are not resting on their laurels. They are evolving to face the challenges first responders are handling today through their insulated tool range. These are purpose-built for the scenarios where contact with hidden electrical hazards isn't just possible, it is increasingly likely. Their insulated tools are engineered for real-world abuse and use, designed to keep firefighters, police officers, and all first responders alive in environments where electrification is outpacing policy, equipment, and training. And you know this. This is the kind of innovation our sector needs and the kind of investment organizations should be stepping up to support if we are serious about protecting first responders from fatal consequences. So a massive thank you to Jafco for backing the podcast and backing the crews on the ground. Go check them out, learn what they're doing, and bring that conversation into your service, because this isn't about the future, it's about right now. 1,000%. I think often when it's done, it's sometimes done. I remember, not so long ago in a service not too far away from where I live and work, they started replacing a lot of the photos because a lot of them had listed names underneath, even if it was old watch photos, and it said Fireman Alan House or something like that. Yeah. And that was just a reflection of the time. Sometimes institutions generally try and rewrite history. It's not that they're like trying to update facts. They're reshaping memory to fit a narrative that's more comfortable or flattering, because the societal norms have changed of today. But it was what it was. That's not too dissimilar from people pulling down statues and, saying we shouldn't teach people about Nazis in schools, and I'm getting off down a rabbit hole here. I promise I'll drag us back in a minute, but I'm like, evil exists in the world. Accidents exist in the world. Shielding people from it or pretending that it didn't exist or didn't happen, I think escalates risk tremendously, especially with the lack of exposure that a lot of fire and rescue service individuals will have these days, because the world has, in certain frameworks, become a safer place. We need to be more focused on the history. We need to be more interested in the lessons that have already been learned. I think it was a Churchill one, wasn't it? Where it's like, if we don't learn from history, we're doomed to repeat it. Absolutely. And we need to remember those things.
Mm. You've hit a spot with me with regard to the term fireman and firewoman.
Okay, hit me.
And I'm absolutely adamant in my work for the trust, and my work historically. I give a lot of talks on the history of the fire service, and I always tell people in the beginning, I'm going to use the terms that were relevant at the time of the period of time I'm talking about. Now, when I'm recording somebody who died in the course of their duties, that person would have been proud of the fact that they were a fireman or a firewoman, because those were the titles of the time. And I have been challenged, and the trust has been challenged as to why we recalled the old ranks and role titles. And I absolutely insist that you cannot rewrite history, as you've just said. And those people, when they died at that moment in time, had that title. And I believe genuinely they were very proud of that title. When I joined, I was a fireman. And it's as simple as that.
It's okay. Are you aware of the Overton window?
Say again?
The Overton window.
Right, go on.
So this is what this is. So the Overton window is a term that's used for a range of ideas or behaviors that society currently considers acceptable or sensible or worth discussing. Anything outside of that is often dismissed as too extreme, taboo, ridiculous, until over time, cultural shifts move the window. So comedians are a great example. They operate on the outskirts of the Overton window. They point at things and go, hey, has anybody seen this? It's a bit ridiculous, isn't it? That's what a comedian does. They point to the edge of the Overton window. Like issues around smoking in public, same-sex marriage, mental health awareness, gender norms and differences and all that sort of stuff. That is what the Overton window is. And I think when we go around trying to whitewash history, that is what people do. Because this is where a podcast is a little bit different, because leaders will communicate way inside the Overton window, scared of stepping on any cultural landmines. And then we overly sterilize it to the point where listening to leaders, we just think it's fake sometimes. My words, not yours. But I say to people, you shouldn't be applying the Overton window of today. You can't stamp that framework like a cookie cutter on the past and then throw away everything that doesn't fit inside it, because it was a totally different time. You know, it's just so very different. The things my mum and dad did when they were kids, you know, they were great people and they're still alive, you know, but like the way they were treated or the language they used was just different. It was just very, very different. And I think, just sorry to tap dance on that moment for a minute, but I just think it's so important that we do honor what it was and what they did, because otherwise you're saying they were wrong. You know, if I'd have joined 50 years ago, I'd have proudly taken on the role of fireman, and I'd have been really proud of it. That doesn't mean I still think that's an appropriate term today, because everything's changed.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? But don't sit there and pretend. If you were in that position, you would have, with the same cultural influences, with the same upbringing, you'd have done exactly the same. All of us, everybody listening to this, you'd have done exactly the same, and you'd have seen no wrong with it. So don't sit on your White House, tower today and throw stones at the past, because you did exactly the same thing.
Yeah, because if we move aside from the gender issue, if you start changing people's titles, whether you want to use the term rank or role or whatever, it's a title. We would be removing ancient titles like inspector, and superintendent, corporals. These were all titles that were used historically in the fire service. When individual fire brigades created their own rules, their own titles. I mean, one of the most common names used in the past for what is now a chief fire officer was a captain. They were called the captain. Very common. They didn't hold a military rank. They weren't a naval captain, but the term captain was used in that way. So I believe absolutely that the trust stance and my stance is that you record what you've got. The biggest headache for me is when that change took place, when the term firefighter came in to replace fireman and firewoman, is because it happened differently around the country. So you reach a very fine line as to which one I should be using when I refer to this person.
Yeah, and then like you say, you take your eyes off what you're trying to optimize for, the true, celebration of the career that they had and what they did. So we've kind of been teasing it there and alluding to it, but I've because we've had met each other before, and Jerry and a lot of people speak so highly of you. People will know sort of your background, because you started with the retained or on call, as it would have been referred to, or RDS system back then, and then you went all the way. You went all the way through to senior leadership team in Hampshire. Like, what was the sort of playbook when you joined? What was your first interpretations of the fire and rescue service?
I joined it retained in a small village station in the New Forest. I just had this magnetic attraction to want to do that. At the time, I was apprentice in the motor trade as a panel beater and paint sprayer. But I very quickly realised that, having become retained, just how much I liked this. I liked what it was. Poorly paid in those days. You certainly didn't get. You certainly didn't have people coming into it for the pay. No. It was just one of those community things you did in the village, and very often an individual fire station was full of family members, because it was just something that individual families did. I very quickly realised that I wanted to go into become a whole-time fireman, as it was. Because I lived fairly close to Southampton, and they had a very well-known brigade, I joined them whole time. But I continued to do my retained activities as well. So I was whole time in one brigade, the Southampton City Brigade, and I was whole time with Hampshire Fire Service. I think it was very much a community thing. It was. You gave your time, your family gave their time for you to be doing it, and you had to fight to get onto ride the fire appliance. You had to fight because of everybody was so keen. You had so many people.
Oh, it's still the
Not
case
like
now, mate.
today.
I
Not
did
like
it for
today.
10 years when I joined, and it was, sprinting down to the station as fast as you could. When I first joined, just before my 18th birthday, I used to ride a Yamaha DTR 125, and I would have firefighters up my arse, like in their cars, nearly nipping at my back thing. And I remember a couple of times, I remember my old watchman dropped his motorbike on its side, had slid past the fire station one day because he was desperately trying to get down in the winter.
Yeah.
And you'd bundle in there and there'd be elbows and trying to get your tally on the board and people moving tallies, and then firefighters getting on the back or opening the door and going, well, what the F are you doing here? Your tally's not even on the board. You're not on call. And then inevitably every single time truck rolls out the door, people are straight onto the A3 sheet, as it was back then, covered in Tipp-Ex and highlighters, going, he's not even on. Do you know what I mean? And oh my sweet Lord, if you'd have left your keys on the board and you weren't on call and you just rode the truck, God forbid what's going to be in your vehicle when you get back. Because we were putting talcum powder in people's air vents. We were, putting smelly dummies in people's boots. There was all kinds of mannerisms. You never messed with any PPE. I never touched anybody's, personal effects or money. But the cars, they were, nobody scratched them or damaged them. It was all just playful stuff. But very emotive. And especially when you got a couple of recruits on there and everyone says they have to get their wares done because they need to get the sign off and all that sort of jazz. So you get the old hands getting pretty annoyed they hadn't worn BA in a couple of years. And even when I joined, we were still doing, 7 or 8 calls a day with a 2-pump on-call station. So it was a fantastic way for me to be welcomed into the service. But very much driven on passion, isn't it? The on-call. They don't do it for the money.
And I mean, I go back to the day. Sadly, I'm old enough to be. It was a siren and bells in the house that turned us out. So we didn't have pages. So responding from home to the sound of an air raid siren sounding, was.
How did that work in your house then? So how did they set them up? Let's do this bit of history. So you responded to a fire call. How did you respond? Go real detail as you could.
When you became retained, effectively there was an order then placed with the GPO, General Post Office, and they would physically put a bell in your house in the location of your choice.
Love it.
And when there was a call, the call would go through to the station, and depending on the service, the receiving end might be slightly different. But I certainly in my time it was GPO teleprinters. And you would have a single strip of paper come out with everything printed on this. So the fire control would take a call. They would select the station. They would send a message to the station, which activated the teleprinter, activated the siren between 7 in the morning and 11 o'clock at night. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, you had a bell that would operate 13 bursts in a minute. And you would have. So
was this a normal bell? Was it like a Pelton wheel bell? Was it what sort of bell was it you actually had in your house? I'm sorry,
it was like a miniature version of a fire carillon bell. It was a bell shaped bell on a black frame on the wall, and it would operate for that.
Please tell me you've still got one of them.
You couldn't turn it off. I do have one.
How much do you want for it?
Yeah,
I've got so much stuff in my house. It's sad.
You couldn't turn it off. That was the thing, Pete. So the family,
you put a bit of cotton wool around it?
Well, it was normally a sock. My father would normally throw a sock in there.
Was your dad on call as well, was he?
No. But it was, of course, this thing would go on. You were out the door in seconds, and this thing was still running around because you couldn't turn it off.
Yeah.
The siren would be in the silent hours. The siren wouldn't sound. It was only bells. So those that were retained basically had to be in their home at that time. And why was 11 o'clock chosen? Well, it was 10:30, 10:40 drinking up time in the pub. So you were home before home after the pub closed, So
you had to be in the house, which is obvious. But just a worthwhile pause for people. You just we forget so much the privilege of these devices in our pockets. Well, privilege and curse, but that's why communities, I think, were so much, I don't want to say stronger, but they were just different back then, weren't they? Like, how many
Well,
people know their neighbours these days? We go to
exactly.
loads of illicit drugs factories and stuff like that, and when you go to them, 2 doors down, you've got Mrs. Goggins. It's always Mrs. Goggins, of course. And she's like, I had no idea. And you're like, yeah, because we don't know our neighbours. You just don't know them anymore, do you? You don't pop over the fence, have them round for tea, share a barbecue. Society's very different now.
Yeah, the whole village would know when there was a call, and they knew that the local fireman would be responding on push bikes,
sprinting down the street or whatever. Yeah,
and they would do things like open gates or hold the community knew who their firemen were, that they had a call, they were going on a call. I mean, it was part of certainly smaller village life. I mean, it happened in the towns as well, because they were still sirens right up until 71, 72, 3 period. That's that's when the very first pagers came in.
I remember for me, it was of course pager, and we used a Ramsdack, I think, system it was back then, and I many times running down in my swim shorts because I would swim every morning, and I'd just put the alerter on the side of the pool near the emergency exit. And then every now and again, obviously, it would go off. You just hop straight out of the pool, staff let you out the emergency exit, and off you go, just sprinting through town in your trainers and your swim shorts. But I'm sure that was just me. So
it was like the size of a brick on the side of your belt. I mean, it wasn't those small ones you've got today. It was a large thing that you had to plug in and charge. So by the side of your bed or something, you'd have this big black box, and you'd drop the pager in the top, and that would then keep it charged up for when the call came in.
So when did you join the whole-time service?
1970.
1970. So how long would you have been in at that point? This episode is brought to you in partnership with Godiva Limited. Godiva is one of the world's leading providers of specialist equipment for emergency services market. Godiva produces a comprehensive range of fire pumps, including vehicle-mounted, portable, and their cutting-edge integrated total water flow control system, SAMFlows. I've been using Godiva my entire career as a reliable pump on the fire ground. It is such a crucial element of a successful firefighting team that you want to empower your crews with the very best, reliable, quality product. Reach out to our partners by checking the notes in the podcast. Now back to the show.
I was in my third year then of being retained, then joined. And, Southampton as a city brigade was fantastic. 4 stations, lots of big risk around. I was at the, what they called Central Station, and we were the busy station. The days of pump escapes and emergency tenders and wonderful.
How many firemen on the watch?
We had then about 13, I think it was, 13 or 14.
Okay, so it still wasn't a massive station. I know at the central station
it was
in the service I'm at, it was like
5-bay station.
But you'd cross crew.
Yeah, the ET and the TLs were driver only crewed. So you would be driving through the streets as a driver only often, unless you had a full watch. You always had a full watch on overtime nights and days, but
of course.
But yeah. I mean, if you were the emergency tender driver, if it went out of area, it would go with a crew of 4 or 5. But if you were responding within the city, you went with one person.
So what context were you given around historical elements of the fire service when you joined? Were they still talking about the fire guards and the fire watchers of World War II, or like what did you, because you've been a historian for a great deal of time, like when did that fascination with that side of the job come in for you?
I think the fascination for me came because I was always interested in history. It was one of my favourites at school, and I was just curious. I wanted to know more. I wanted to learn. I wanted to be a good member of the service, and I wanted to learn. So I was one of those sad individuals that would, read the drill book from cover to cover, because everybody was issued with an individual drill book. I read the manuals. I could quote paragraphs and pages from the manuals. I subscribed to Fire magazine, which was the magazine of the time. It was the internet of the time. You went to Fire Magazine because that's where you got your information about.
Some would argue it
incidents and
still
so on.
is, but there is a lot of magazines out there now, and even they
Yeah,
are all going electronic. We work
yeah,
with a lot of them because they're sort of seeing that this is another version of media now. But
yeah. I think, so my interest just rose. Do you know what? I was also very lucky. I was lucky to serve with guys that served during World War II, served in the NFS, and I would just love to sit and talk to them and drag out of them their stories. And I think
come
that,
on, Alan, take us a walk down memory lane. So, and also we've done it already. I don't want to stop us because there's lots of people listening. We don't want to get into the love of TLAs, 3-letter acronyms, and all that sort of stuff. So, National Fire Service. Talk to us about National Fire Service, what it was. Make no assumptions of me or the listener. Talk to me like I'm a 12-year-old member of the public.
So the National Fire Service was formed on the 18th of August, 1941.
Jesus.
Prior
Exactly.
to,
It wasn't the 17th.
it
I
was the
thought
18th.
I had the 17th written down, sorry.
It was one of the fastest pieces of legislation ever to pass through Parliament.
Okay.
And after the war, they actually found that it was perhaps done, it wasn't legal because they hadn't followed all the processes. But that's a little aside for you.
Typical birth of the fire service.
But it had to come about because prior to the outbreak of World War II, you had the 1938 Fire Brigade Act. That was the first act that decided that the fire services around the country had to operate differently. That there had to be some rules and some standardization, because hitherto anybody could set up a fire brigade. So many villages had their own parish fire brigade.
Mm-hmm.
The 1938 Act took away the right for anybody below a rural district council to operate a fire brigade. So they designate who could be
because it
a
was
fire
like patchwork, wasn't it? There was loads of cracks. There were local and voluntary. Some towns were well funded. There was a couple of professional brigades. Others had volunteers. That's when there was the sort of informal bucket brigades, really. Then and those
and there was
elements,
no standards.
Yeah.
No standards, you see, Pete. One fire brigade, individual fire brigade, could refuse to operate outside its area, so they wouldn't necessarily go and help another one, or they'd only do it if there was a payment. It was that crude. It really was.
But also, even if they did that, there was such variation, like you say, in standardization. They would have hoses that wouldn't connect to each other, command structures that didn't work.
Yeah.
I wonder if the hoses is probably the only one. That's harsh. I was going to say it's the only one thing we've managed to nail. But and even then, I think we went in the wrong direction. I think everybody should have gone Storks couplings, personally. But we went with the instantaneous, didn't we?
Well, we went the way we did, and that's it. But you're right. I mean, because individual brigades then they didn't have the internet, or they didn't have technology to be able to go to. They bought from travelling salesmen. And depending on what part of the country you were in, the chief officer might have gone to a conference somewhere, and you saw the fire industry putting stuff on display, and they bought a particular type of thread of a particular size, or they bought hydrants from water companies in an area who chose to use different types of hydrants.
Or that invited them on a nice meal out and gave a contribution to them personally. That's my words, not yours, Alan. But I'm sure there was a lot of that happening back then. Not at all now, of course.
It was certainly a different way of structuring your outfit and buying the equipment for it. So just to give you the thread back then what happened was it was clear there was going to be war. It was clear from 1936 on, from when the Spanish Civil War in particular, and you saw for the first time what could be done with incendiary bombs. The 1937 Air Raid Precautions Act was actually the route that allowed the government to set up an auxiliary fire service. So they funded an auxiliary fire service, the AFS, not to be muddled up with the post-war AFS, which was part of the Cold War era and Green Goddesses. They set up an AFS, they funded it, they equipped it, and they were then attached to the existing fire brigades. That
Yeah.
organisation was just getting embedded from 1938. A lot of the units only and the 1938 Act only came into being in the beginning of 1939.
Mm-hmm.
War broke out on the 3rd of September 1939. So you had a very young, fledgling, reorganised fire brigades around the country with an AFS. War broke out. We went into that period of the blitzes, the heavy raids, the big learning that came from that. And in March, April, May time, the Home Office inspectorate that had been established went around the country and basically reported back to the government that the fire service was on its knees. It was
overwhelmed. Yeah.
Overwhelmed, worn out equipment. And you made mention to it just now. They came to realise that when they sent fire crews from the south of England to help fight the fires in Coventry, when they jumped out, they couldn't connect their hoses, they couldn't use the hydrants, etc.
Yeah.
So the National Fire Service was formed to standardise the way that the British Fire Service operated.
So we had the Fire Brigades Act in 38, but it wasn't until 41 when the NFS came around, was it?
Yep. And they continued until the 1st of April 1948, because there was always a promise that it would be handed back to local authority control. But when they handed it back, it went to a higher level of local authority control. So rural district councils could not run fire brigades. It had to be...
Well, it was recognised as part of national security, wasn't it? So it needed to sit at a higher level, really.
But I don't think they used the term national security like they do today. I don't think that was recognised. I think it was more political. I think it was about going back to local government.
Fire service? No.
But what they did, Pete, when they handed it back to local authority control, but set against national standards. And there are many things that happen today that evolved from what they learned and introduced in the National Fire Service. I mean, when I
Give us some tidbits. Give us some cultural references of that time. Pluck a few out for me. I know I'm putting you on the spot.
Well, some of the early command and control procedures that we run today for incident command originated with the NFS. Because they didn't have anything before, so they had to produce something like they were the first the control units that came in. Water relaying, water supplies were all formed from standardizations through the NFS. Some of our procedures, not so much today, because you guys serving today are working on things a lot more, electronic and digital. But when I was serving, and for many years when I was serving, we were still using forms that were originally NFS forms, and all that happened was the local brigade changed the number on the top of it, but it was exactly the same form.
Was this Kevin? Do you know Kevin Arbuthnot?
Yes.
Yeah, I'm not. I think this was before his time, but I think he was telling me about his contribution. He didn't do it all, of course, but he had contributions to trying to create some standardized national command structure stuff. We had Kevin on a little while ago. Lovely bloke.
Yeah, he led the very successful project initiative that came out of the then Chief Fire Officers Association to introduce.
I think I'm getting lost in my timelines. That was much later, I think. Sorry.
Yeah, it was. It was a lot later.
Apologies.
On.
Yeah.
So yeah. So the National Fire Service, I believe, was a fundamental vehicle in the way that the fire service is structured today. The no borders mobilising type approach. No, if your arrangements for sending stuff over the border, and the big thing, I suppose, Pete, the big thing is that if you sent a crew from Southampton up to Glasgow, pretty much they would be able to step out the vehicle and engage in firefighting and follow procedures in terms of connection of hoses and that kind of thing. So there was many standardizations, particularly on fitments and the approach to doing it.
The National Fire Service set the pay as well, didn't they? Because prior to that, cross-border working and charging for that was probably very much the Wild West, because there wasn't standardized national pay for firefighters then, was there?
That's right. There was standardised pay, standardised ranks, pensions. All of those things fell out of the National Fire Service. Effectively, that's where they brought all of that together. And certainly in terms of ranks and terminology and procedures, they were the body really that set all that up.
So what were some of the terms? We spoke earlier about sort of fire watch and watchman and some of the things that all came from the Blitz. Like I remember going to, is it Sheffield where there's one of the museums?
Yeah, the Emergency Services Museum. Yes.
Love it. Absolutely love it. I'm sure there's many others like it, but that's one of my fondest memories. I've been there a few times just for general meetings and stuff. If no one's ever been there, go. Because it is an old firehouse. I think it's got a 3-floor pole drop still. Is it 3 or 4 floors?
I think they have, yeah.
And you can see,
as you say, it's an old fire station.
All the little offices and all that sort of jazz. But again, you see the sort of fire watch boxes and all this sort of stuff. Like, because they would be positioned, because they had little points on top of them. I'm assuming they were crane lifted onto the top of buildings.
Yeah.
And then people would just stand in them. They had a little slit cut into the front of it, and they would just watch across the city for fires. Am I right in saying that?
Yeah, you're right. The idea was that was for protection from falling shrapnel and falling debris. So during the heat of
how bloody cold do you think they were? Because they are big cast iron cylindrical things, aren't they? Or like egg shaped. It is beyond a privilege to be able to bring the Firefighters podcast to you, and we are so grateful for every single person that supports, listens, shares, and follows our journey. But here's the honest truth. It takes a colossal amount of time and work to keep the podcast going. And to help us keep doing it, create more, reach more guests internationally, and make the podcast sustainable, we're asking for you to help. And to do this, we've set up a Patreon page. Now, by joining this, you'll not only support the future of the podcast, but also gain access to exclusive benefits. Now, if you've ever wanted to meet a member of the podcast, buy us a beer, buy us a coffee, and you think anything you've ever listened to on the podcast has been worth £3, that's basically what we're asking you for. By joining our Patreon community, you will get access to every single full episode archive we have ever made. Now, hundreds and hundreds of key documents that we've got in there on fire behavior, firefighter health, cancer risks, instant debriefs, and so much more. So if you feel like you want to join the Patreon crew and help us make this possible, head to patreon.com/TFFPC or check the link in any episode podcast notes.
Yeah, I don't think they were big. They were a conical shape. They were craned in position. They were designed for protection. They weren't actually designed to be the place from which you did your fire watching, because once you needed protection, everybody knew pretty much that you had a raid going on and the stuff was coming down. So it was there were many people killed by falling shrapnel. Whatever you send up in the sky to try and bring down an aircraft, at some point it's got to come down, apart from the aircraft itself and the stuff it might be dropping. So, those were the fire watchers. So you had the government decided they needed to do something to provide extra protection and to try and take the load off of the fire brigades of the time, the fire service. So they put a compulsory order out to say that all men and women of an age bracket had to register and report for either fire watching duties or for what became known as the fire guard. They were originally known as supplementary fire parties, sometimes incorrectly called street fire parties.
Okay.
They were not part of the fire service. They were part of the civil defence organisation, and they worked in support of the fire service, trying to deal with all the thousands of incendiary bombs that were being dropped. So they were pretty crudely equipped with a stirrup pump, buckets of sand. They had a lightweight helmet, a civilian helmet that wasn't as robust as the steel helmets that the military and the civil defence services wore. Their job...
Stirrup pumps. God.
Yep.
Do you think there's many stirrup pumps still around? I think we just got rid of all of ours because we are still using them for chimney fires.
Some brigades are still using them for chimney fires.
Okay.
Definitely.
So for people that don't know, Google it. Stirrup pump's like it's a positive displacement pump effectively, isn't it? It's just an up and down. Looks like a bike pump.
That's a bicycle pump is the way I describe it when I'm talking to somebody.
Yeah,
Same
that's what it
principle.
looks like. And it's just got one-way valves inside it that work by displacing the water and blah, 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 blah. But it would just squirty out the end of it. Hard work over a long period of time. And they don't move a massive volume of water, to be fair. So they'd have stirrup pumps and sand.
Yeah, dry sand. I mean, you had to apply the water from a stirrup pump in a particular way, because if you're not careful, you go put water on to what is effectively melting metal, because the incendiary bombs were just magnesium that once they fired, if you put water on it, they were going to go, they effectively spread the fire.
Yes.
So they had to be dealt with very carefully.
If anybody remembers little science lessons, when you put magnesium in the water, that's the thing that fizzes and pops and goes bright white and all that jazz. You used to see it in a lot of vehicle fires, didn't we? You put a lot of water on a vehicle fire and you'd see when you hit the magnesium components. I don't think there's many of them still the case, but you'd always see it when you'd hit one.
And aero engines in particular, if you had a lot of magnesium in aero engines and aircraft parts.
So there was that. There was bicycle messengers, wasn't there, as well?
Yeah, you had messengers. The very first messengers could be 16 years of age, but in fact they were youths that lied about their age, and there were boys 14 taking messages from control rooms or fire stations out to and from where there was a fire, because certainly radio was pretty much non-existent. And if you start dropping bombs out of the sky and you've got pole-hung telephone cables, they're going to pretty much come down and be useless.
Not last long. Yeah.
So they took messages to request reinforcements, give reports back. Bicycles to begin with, then motorcycles, and then moved on to later on to pretty hefty motorcycles, proper dispatch riders. And here's an interesting thought for you when we're talking about gender. Women were absolutely not allowed to fight fires, ride fire engines.
Why?
They were taught how to use stirrup pumps to be able to self-protect in their fire station or whatever, where they're around, to try and quell a blaze. It was considered far too dangerous for a woman to ride a fire engine. However, it was not considered too dangerous to ride a damn great motorcycle through the streets with bombs falling and debris falling to deliver messages to and from control points and fire stations.
Totally different thing, Alan. Totally different.
Nor was it, and I love this one, nor was it considered dangerous to drive an open back lorry through the streets loaded with cans of petrol to feed the many trailer pumps that needed to be kept going with petrol. No, that wasn't considered too dangerous. So
the logic challenges
of the time.
Well, national service.
Yes.
Do you think we should still do national service? Controversial.
The trouble with answering that one is, of course, I've never experienced national service. But
neither have I.
But the theory behind it appears to be something that would benefit the nation and the individual. And whether it's national service from a military perspective or whether it's a community service type approach.
I was about to say, that's the mistake we make, I think, is people, word association game, would they think national service, they hear mandatory military conscription. And that's not what I'm talking about, because there is other countries, and I'm not going to pretend to try and remember them, where you have to do 2 years, but you can do it for a school. You could do it for the local fire brigade. You could do it for the police. You could do it for your national health service or whatever it might be. Yeah. And I just think there is so many net positives to it. And again, this is saying from the elitist view that I've never done it, so what the hell does Pete know? But teaching you personal standards, personal admin, the way to communicate with people, organizing your life, how to work with others, a sense of purpose and service and stronger community ties. I just think and also just general exposure, character building stuff. I think there's a lot of benefits that could be taken from it. I think we give the youth of today so much freedom and autonomy that it's actually quite paralyzing for them. I don't think they know what to do with that level of freedom. I think they would benefit tremendously from just a bit more insight, not necessarily direction or force. But you say you're going to do this for a couple of years, and then you haven't got to do it anymore if you don't want to. You haven't got to stay on and do it. Even if we just did it for a year, you know, I just think there'd be a lot of benefit for the nation. But maybe people might hear that and go, toxic male, national party, whatever. I don't know. I'm not particularly into politics, but those views are probably not considered healthy by some people.
Yeah, I think some European countries in particular have made good use of this. I think that there are some that basically did it as an alternative to military service. So, and I don't know if this figure's right, but just to give you an example, it's like, well, you're going to have to do 1 year's military service, or you can do 2 years service in the fire brigade or whatever. So
Great.
that was the way that now Germany had a model on that basis for a very long time. And I think I'm right in saying
it
that
was
Germany
Germany, yeah.
still has a
I
massive
think it is. Yeah.
number of volunteers.
I remember having one of them on, and they said the fire service is so strong and popular over here because something like, and again, I'm sure I'll get it wrong. I think it was, oh God, I'll remember him in a minute. A friend of mine that we had on from Germany. Every 1 in 100 people has been in the fire service. There's a number like that or something at some point, like they've done part of their 1 year or 2 year in the fire service. So it gets so much support both from the community and from the government because people opt for it as a choice when they're given those choices. So they have a personal link to it. So they tend to champion it more. You know what I mean? And I just think there's a lot to be said for that.
I also believe I'm right in saying that in the immediate aftermath of World War II, and all of the bad press that went with what was the Hitler Youth, they wanted to encourage youth engagement, youth activities, and the fire service was chosen as one of the areas which they would support as being a place where youngsters could become part of their youth fire brigades. And they're still very strong today.
Cadets. Yeah.
Yes, cadets in today's language.
It's a manifestation of it, yeah.
But they effectively, the fire service was seen as a worthy way of engaging youth and trying to almost deconstruct the incredible sort of amount of brainwashing that went on with the Hitler Youth.
Yeah. Well, the poison's in the dose, and that sort of influence on a young person can be manipulated for bad means. But I don't think that's a justification for getting rid of it completely, because conscription ended in the 60s, didn't it? Or might have been 1960 actually.
Yeah.
It was the early 60s, to say that. So take us back to your career. So you joined Romantic Young Firefighter, you joined Whole Time, Central Station. How did you fumble your way and find your way all the way into a senior leadership position? Well deserved, I'm sure. But a lot of chiefs that I speak to tend to tell me, and deputy chiefs, that wasn't necessarily an aspiration from the start.
I think I always wanted to go for promotion.
Okay.
It was very, very structured then, Pete, with what you had to do. There was like an apprenticeship, really.
Uh-huh.
You know, you knew that you had to gain certain milestones from first joining and, passing your probation and this kind of thing. And, and you became a breathing apparatus wearer, because
Lead
to start with, it wasn't there. When I first joined, Pete, the station didn't have breathing apparatus on the fire engine.
And then you only had two.
So you went through that. So you knew you had to. Then you became a driver, and you started to build this career path. And then you had the structured fire service examination process. So you had to take a leading fireman written and a leading fireman practical, and then a sub-officer did. You knew you had a path to go through. And you effectively built your knowledge, your awareness. You were tested on it extensively. And then when jobs came up, you were qualified for, but you then had to prove yourself to be worthy of taking that position. And I just trod that path. trod that path, knowing that at some point I wanted to be. My first ambition was to be the officer in charge of a station.
Nice.
And when I got to be the officer in charge of a station, I actually had that moment where I thought, I love this. I'm not going anywhere, because I had a great station. It was busy. It was not bothered by senior officers, because you had to cross a bridge to get to it. I was in my own little kingdom.
Your own little mini fire service, yeah.
And I absolutely loved it. But ambition was still there, so I got on the path, and I wanted to go higher and higher. And then I wanted to be a divisional commander, in the days when there were such things. And I achieved
Take me back for a second, sorry. I don't want to pause, sorry to interrupt, but when you did your examinations, I know you just sort of commonly refer to them as the fireman examinations boards and all of those sorts of things, but some of the stuff that was studied then, I think, has really fallen off the sort of spectrum. I mean, there was the firemanship exams, but even they had, elements of fire behavior, appliances, ladders, hose drills, a lot of things that we see today. You also did some elementary physics and chemistry there, didn't you? And then
Yes.
there was a big focus on building construction as well, if memory serves.
Yes, there was.
How
So
much
you
of that has lasted the test of time?
Yeah, I think it's changed. I mean, I think, like everything else, there were things. If you take the drill book, everybody that joined was given a personal copy of the drill book.
Mm-hmm.
You could only it's got the name drill book, but it had a lot more in there than drills, as it were, and that was something you could refer to. You knew you were going to be questioned on it as a young buck member of the service. But you could also refer to it if you'd forgotten something or you weren't sure about something. You could refer to it, and go through that. And funnily enough, I gave a copy to a senior member of the service recently who didn't even know what I was talking about, and I then handed that over. The manuals were, I say, a complete set. So you had a manual built entirely around building construction, around
manuals
chemistry,
of firemanship. I've got them all over there,
as they were known, and you had this whole set. And I and many of my colleagues worked hard to buy them. You could buy them on a loan scheme, and you could.
I think you can still get them from the IFE.
Yeah, probably, but not the same, are they?
They've been revised. Yeah.
They were produced by the Home Office, so they went through the Fire Service Inspectorate, so they had some standardisation. So if I was reading something on building construction down in Hampshire, it was the same thing that was being read by somebody that was in Sheffield or
Manchester, Leicestershire, Nottingham, wherever, up in Scotland.
So you got on that, but you had to learn them. You because you were going to be examined on them. Absolutely. You had a written exam, first of all, was absolutely, you had to write a lot of words to cover the subject. And they were in chemistry, water supplies, you name it, everything that was deemed then to be part of a firefighter's job.
But is it not now, though? Because, there was elements on, pressures, heat transfer, and Bernoulli equations and stuff like that. And I appreciate some people don't like to get too far into it, and they can think it's quite elitist. Perhaps it lends itself more to people with a different neurodivergence, perhaps more of an academic background. But I think the how was what we probably had an issue with, not the what. Like the what we were learning, I think most people would still argue is relevant. It's the how we were learning it and being asked to assimilate it, absorb it, and sort of disseminate it. We were asked to write long things about it. But in today's age, like when I work with some of my firefighters through their development, we just do recorded conversations. I just record it on a device and they upload it to their system. Because a lot of them don't like reading lots. And if you start writing lots, it's very open to plagiarism and copy and paste and chat GPT and all that jazz. So I just like to sit down and we have 3 topics written down on a piece of paper and we'll chat about them, and we'll chat for ages about them. And it's so quick because you can do thousands of words in a couple of minutes. Do you know what I mean? Just having a conversation about it. And I want to know that you understand it. And I want to have conversations that go down little rabbit holes about it and all that sort of jazz. But I feel like we just threw so much of it. And I do have a big bugbear about building construction, not only because it relates to some of the fatalities in the UK recently, not to say that those individuals didn't know anything about construction. That's not what we're talking about. But I just think that it is a diminishing knowledge set.
I think it is, Pete, and I think you kind of hit on the problem is that rather than modernizing and rethinking about that learning technique, we just
threw the baby out with the bathwater, didn't we?
We threw it out, and so much. I mean, I have a particular concern about water supplies and firefighters of today knowledge of water supplies and how to deal with pumps. And I know that modern pumps with their computer settings and everything else don't give a lot of scope compared to what me and my colleagues had to learn and could do with a mechanical pump at the time. But some of the principles around water supply, if you ain't got the wet stuff, you're not going to put out the red stuff, are you? So, you got to be able to think about.
And it's the amount of the wet stuff and the flow of it. It's not just about, I think a lot of the systems and the development of a lot of the electronic pumps that we work with have all been fed from a knowledge base of pressure is what the optimized metric was. And we kind of stepped away from flow and capacity and volume is what I think, if I had to give it some big, broad brushstrokes. If you look at that sort of learning cycle, it's created a lot of unconscious incompetence. Incompetence is a very emotive word, and I'm not saying I'm sitting here like the god of knowledge of anything. I just really try and find people that know a lot more than I do about physics and try and take a nugget from them. And it just, I think, especially perhaps for yourself, like someone said to me that mentored me a long time ago, the more your island of knowledge grows, so does the shore of ignorance. Like you realize how much you don't know. the more you learn, the more you realize you don't know. And you go, oh, Christ, I had no idea, you know?
But I get all of that. I just think there are some fundamentals of the job of the fire service which don't change.
This episode of the podcast is brought to you by Gore-Tex Professional Fabrics. Now, we all know the working environment of a firefighter is filled with challenges. We face serious risks on the job, such as heat exhaustion, burns, physical and mental stress, and we frequently come into contact with high levels of toxic chemicals. Now, I have been wearing Gore-Tex for nearly 2 decades on the front line, working in hostile environments, tackling challenging incidents from firefighting to water incidents and in urban search and rescue environments. Gore-Tex have a well-earned reputation for protecting professionals in the fire and emergency services through their family of highly innovative, waterproof, breathable moisture barriers that exceeds global performance standards and are trusted worldwide. Gore-Tex, going further together.
And some of those things about volume and capacity and water flow and all of those whatever subject you want to pick are still the same. It's just a different way of delivering it, but you've still got to think about the principles.
You've got to know the fundamentals.
Yeah. I mean, I learned and was taught some ridiculous things. You know, I could strip down a BA set of the time and quote you every size of every orifice in the thing and how many turns there were on a nut or whatever, because that's the way we were taught and that was the thinking of the time. You know, we didn't need to know a lot of the stuff that was there. And gradually through time, we are guilty of not modernizing the content and the method of teaching. So we just threw it away. And now
we needed to put it through a filter, didn't we? We needed to put it through a filter and get rid of some other stuff. I often say to firefighters, and now when I'm doing training, like, I don't want to know the molecular makeup of marmalade. I want to know you can open the jar, though.
Yeah.
And exactly. I do want to know that you understand which way the jar turns and what happens when the stuff falls out of it.
Yeah.
I don't care if you know the biological makeup of a banana, but I do want to know that you can peel it and how heavy it is and how many people it takes to peel it. You know, that's
exactly
we threw too much of it out, didn't we?
Yeah, we did, because the first manuals, and we're flipping back again, the first manuals were written by the National Fire Service as part of standardization. And it was written in a time of war. And it was written at a time when, but And so many of those things continued on. So when I joined in the late 60s, there were still things in there that originated in the first manuals of 1941, 42. So we were guilty of sitting back and allowing that to happen. Plus, I think advancement in technology, vehicles and equipment is much faster today than it was in the early days of my career.
Exponential. The speed of development is extraordinary. Crazy.
Yeah, absolutely. But there are still some principles that are the same.
Yes.
Why do I get the impression, let me emphasize the impression, why do I get the impression that there is a greater reluctance today for firefighters to go into buildings to fight fires?
Okay.
I pose that as a question. That's all.
I think we've been
see,
scared to death about decontamination.
Yes.
I think the poison's in the dose. I think a lot of decontamination stuff, and I do a lot of support around firefighter cancer prevention, and John Lord's a good friend, and I'm massively behind all of this. But 80% of it is behavioral. I'm plucking some figures out of my arse there. But like a lot of this, wipe down, shower before the hour, reduce exposure, blah, 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 blah. That doesn't mean don't do the thing. It means go in, do the thing, move quickly with purpose, and decontaminate responsibly immediately after. Upgrade PPE for particulate protection and all that sort of jazz. But when people start saying, don't you know how many firefighters have died? There's no savable life in there. No fire is worth the death of a firefighter. I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa. You've just gone straight to 100 and you're catastrophizing and using extreme language to justify this narrative, when realistically, if we don't send firefighters into buildings, we actually heighten the risk of the day they do need to go in for savable life because they've had no exposure. So I always want to send firefighters in, and it's something that I wrestle with different management and leadership at different conversations across the UK. But why do you think we're more nervous?
I don't know. What I'm saying is that's a perception, and I'm not trying to be controversial here. And I'm
no. This is a conversation topic. Yeah.
I'm not criticising the guys that are doing the job and doing the job admirably today.
Oh, it's not the firefighters that don't want to go in. I think it's the people leading them and managing them that stop them. I think there's a lot of hungry bulldogs.
That's been put to me as well. I would tell you it's a topic of conversation quite often comes up with retired firefighters.
Yeah.
Now, they don't know. We don't know because we're not in the job anymore, and you shouldn't criticise. It's about a perception. It's what you see happening or what we hear about the way things are done. And it's a question from me. It's not a state. It's not anything that I'm trying to
accusation.
Criticize.
No,
but and is that part of the learning? Is that because we've learned from the past and we now realise that we shouldn't send people into fires that don't have people in them? I sit more in the camp that you've just said, which is, but what happens when the time comes when you do need to go in there?
Well, also, I don't think we correctly have an interpretation of how to quantify the societal effect of losing that building. That business that's been family owned for 30 years, or even that big commercial Premier Inn. Oh, it doesn't matter. The insurance will pay for it. Okay, what about the 200 jobs that employs? What about the people that are going to be displaced, lose their jobs, which will perpetuate societal challenges of financial challenges and perhaps domestic violence, perhaps mental health, perhaps addiction to substances, that will all be able to stem back to the loss of that local business? I think we don't quantify and extrapolate that number enough and go, well, is it worth the risk then? When we go into our risk appetite reward, because you can't put a price on life. Well, actually, you can put a price on a life because that's what insurance companies do. There is actually a cost of life. There is, so you die in an industrial accident, there is an amount of money that you will get paid that we quantify your life is worth. So I'm not saying we should be sending people into fatal incidents and recognizing that it's a death as an expectation of the job. That's not what we're talking about at all. That's not what I'm saying. But I do think the pendulum has swung too far. And if there's no savable life, we shouldn't be exposing firefighters to unreasonable risk. We go back to the fireman's mantra, the whole some risk to save savable life and property, no risk to save life and property already extinct or something like that. And I'm like, I think we've interpreted that differently than it was intended.
Yeah, it's a difficult one, isn't it? I mean, is it right that a bedroom fire, which could be tackled in a particular way, suddenly becomes a row of terrace houses where it's gone through the roof?
The public doesn't know what success looks like. They will clap no matter what you do. The fact that if you'd have acted quicker, more aggressively with greater intention and kept it to a single room of origin or the first floor, or you lose the entire row, as you say, and the public goes, well, it was probably a really bloody big fire and they did as well as they could. You know what I mean?
Pete, I think it's also about crewing. I mean,
definitely.
Let's get on to it. When I first joined, we rowed 7.
Yeah.
And so when the guys arrive today and they're crewing with perhaps maximum of 4, and between them and the next station, there's 3 stations off the run because of crewing, and then we've got to wait for that station much further away to come in, who've only got 4. Yeah, I get that. I understand that. I mean, these are all factors that need to be put into the bundle, don't they? To say, well, what's changed? But you took me down the path of saying, well, what did you do with your path? I mean, it was a different era. We did study. I mean, we generally it was 4 or 5 crewing, but you could crew up to 7 on when you had the people on the fire stations to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's a conversation I was having with the National BA Challenge when I was down there recently, because they still run their scenarios with 5s. And that conversation of, if we're trying to aid and inform best practice for national breathing apparatus as one micro example of firefighting, should we be now doing it with crews of 4? Because what is the realistic expectation of how many crews are riding 5s anymore, aside from tactical response vehicles or variable response vehicles or whatever we refer to them as?
Yeah.
Anyway, so when you moved your way through, as I drag us back out of that rabbit hole, you moved your way into a senior leadership position. Talk to me about recognition of staff membering, because you reference the early frustrations around the lean away from recognizing history. Well, that's all well and good when you're not in a position to influence it. But how did you, when did you first come in contact with the Memorial Trust?
I knew of the Memorial Trust in around 2000, something like that. But it was very much a London-focused trust, and the original trust was really focused on London firefighters. Mm-hmm. So I became more involved in 2003 when it became the National Firefighter Memorial, and it had evolved then to recognising all United Kingdom firefighters.
Okay. So when you first started getting involved in that, how did it perpetuate or support your belief now in a senior leadership position of being able to better recognise the sacrifices of the past? Did you seek to support that within service, or was it very much just a passion project?
No, I mean, I don't think there's anybody in the country, whatever their position is in the organisation, who doesn't verbally support what the trust does, and doesn't everybody would want to recognise.
Yeah, but everybody can say that stuff. Like, actions speak louder than words. Everybody clapped for the emergency services during COVID, but we're still facing the greatest financial challenges that we've ever had because of lack of funding through local government. Do you know what I mean? It matters what we do, not just what we say, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But I guess what we are as a trust, we're a trust that gets forgotten if we're not in bright lights at a particular time. So if somebody has lost their lives in the course of their duties, then the trust becomes known, but probably only with that particular group. They become aware of us, mm-hmm. And it's we perhaps are forgotten elsewhere.
Yeah.
The FBU does a great job of reminding people that we exist in their Firefighter magazine, and they mm-hmm. will regularly put things up. And the May the 4th Firefighters Day is remembered mm-hmm. and promoted. So you get that. We will get attendance at our national service of remembrance.
It's never very much publicly put out there, though. I mean, even in local services, members of senior leadership tend to go. if you're part of a Guard of Honor, you probably know about it. But I'd been in well over a decade before I ever even learned about it. Like, just unpick some of the national stuff and also the locations. You know, we've got St. Paul's Cathedral, the National Memorial Arboretum. Tell us about where these things are located, and again, in plain English, just lay out how the structure of the year works.
Yeah, it's a difficult one. So we're not in St. Paul's Cathedral, and we cannot. We've only ever had the one service in St. Paul's Cathedral, and I think that was £10,000 to make use of the cathedral. So
Yikes.
we have always used, when we've done them in
Was
London.
that privately owned? Why do we have to pay for that?
I can't answer that. I don't know how that works. Clearly they've got to survive, and there's they have a structure. But it's St. Paul Cathedral for us as a small independent trust would be unaffordable. We use churches.
That doesn't seem very fair.
Close to, because it's not actually in the cathedral, the memorial in London. It's in Carter Garden, which is adjacent to you, immediately across the road from the cathedral. Always had good support.
I'm sure the fire minister could change that with the swoosh of a pen. If there were appetite. My words, not yours, but I think that's almost offensive.
Not my word. So we have moved our annual service of remembrance to the National Memorial Arboretum in Staffordshire,
which is equally beautiful.
Amazing sight.
What a beautiful sight.
Yeah. And a plug here for them. If anybody listening to this,
just go there for a day out, even if you can't go tomorrow. That is absolutely beautiful. What else is based there? Because there's a lot of military context as well, isn't there?
I don't think unless you've been there, you understand exactly what's there. And I include myself on that. Until I went, I had no idea what it was. Phenomenal.
It's gorgeous. Someone, I don't know, government, military, whoever. That is a beautiful site.
Yeah,
beautiful site. Very well run as well.
Managed by the Royal British Legion now. It's where the National Armed Forces Memorial is. If you don't go to anything else, go and look at that. It's just
gorgeous.
Yeah,
absolutely gorgeous. I had the privilege of being there this year, and the talks, the hospitality, the almost like shivers that you get from the structure of the day. You know, it's a really emotional experience. And I think, excuse the pun, would really relight people's fires around the passion and purpose that the sector has. Because we can so get caught up on our own silos and local challenges, can't we? We forget that we're part of something so much bigger.
Yeah. What we try to do is to hang on to and promote some of our past traditions and ceremony at that event. So that's why we invite the ceremonial teams and the standard bearers, and we put some colour and pageantry into it because I think we've become almost the custodians of some of that tradition and ceremony, which has been forgotten in individual fire and rescue services. And long may that continue. We do that. You asked about people being invited and everything else. Well, it's a very difficult area. That's why we run, if you like, 2 events per year.
Well, it must be a low bar because I got invited, Alan. So, I mean, I don't know if we're scraping the barrel these years or what, but
it is, Pete, it's absolutely open to everybody to come. Yes, and what we have to do is, we are a small independent trust. We have to rely upon invitations going to fire and rescue services. They go to fire and rescue services in the hope that the fire and rescue services will want to promote it or field representatives, and either of any position in the service, by the way, and their ceremonial teams. And that's what we do. We leave it to the fire and rescue services to try and do that.
How is it funded?
It is funded entirely from the trust funds, and we are.
And that receives no government funding, does it?
No, it's independent.
Important point to point, yeah, because it is all contributions.
Yes, each fire and rescue services makes a very small contribution to us annually.
Okay.
And
all of them?
We then rely upon fundraising.
I'm not going to name names, but do all of them do it?
Yes.
Okay.
We have total sign up from the UK Fire and Rescue Services.
Okay, fantastic.
But what we struggled with was, national, where do you hold a national event? Well, the Arboretum is more central than was London when we did it there. There are better
And it's
on-site
nicer. It's
facilities,
easier to park, and it's beautiful.
better facilities
Yeah,
altogether.
it's better. Yeah.
But what we wanted to do was to still give some local ownership, and that's why we promote Firefighters Memorial Day as being the 4th of May, in the hope that each fire station or each fire service premises could hold a moment of silence at midday to remember all those who have given their lives, but also all of those who have been injured. We rarely talk about the people who have been injured doing their job, including those who can no longer continue their chosen career path because of it. So Firefighters Memorial Day isn't just about members of the service who have died. It's about members of the service, basically. And it's a reminder to the public who see a parade out in front of a fire station that the fire service exists, that they're there, that the men and women are there to protect their community. And I think it allows the guys on the station, and I use the word guys in a non-generic term, it's just to say that they people can go there to reflect for lost colleagues, etc. So that's the way of including.
How did it used to be celebrated? Because
it never was.
I was going to say International Firefighters Day was originally Feast of St. Florian, wasn't it?
Yeah,
that only came in the 2000s.
Yeah, but St. Florian Day has been recognised across many countries, particularly Europe, for centuries, years.
Well, he was a Christian martyr. Patient.
He was a Roman soldier.
Yeah, it was made into a Christian thing, though, wasn't it?
Yeah, if you go to a lot of fire stations, particularly in Germany, Austria, and around there, you'll quite often find a St. Florian on the wall of the fire station.
MSA are supporting us on today's podcast, and I chose to partner with them because I've been wearing this stuff for nearly 20 years, and they are the global leader in development, manufacture, and supply of incredible, safe products that really protect people, not just our communities out there, but also first responders, most importantly, all over the world. Get yourself over to MSA and have a look at it. The high-performance protective clothing for emergency services responders. They also partner with us on the UK Pink Firefighters. It's because we love them. The helmets with the reflective visor, the F1XF, absolutely epic helmet. And not forgetting how they improve firefighter safety through their connectivity in the connected firefighter platform. MSA are always pushing the envelope, and it's a real privilege to be able to continue to grow our partnership together. So whether it's your PPE, your bunker gear, your helmets, your SCBA, your thermal imaging, your Luna, or your portable gas detection, both of us know that this equipment needs to work. It needs to be high quality, reliable, and dependable in the moment. And that's why I use MSA, because they know what's at stake.
I've got a lovely coin, and it's got the thing on the back of it.
Yeah.
And, but I've got a St. Florian helmet en route as well. But again, the people might have issues with that because of religious context and blah, blah, blah. So we then
That's why we called it a different thing. That's why we called it.
But it's the same day, basically.
Yeah, and Australia celebrated big time too that day because of a number of firefighters they lost in bushfires.
Yeah, it was 5 firefighters in... It was a bushfire. Where was it? Do you remember?
I think it was the Black Friday one, wasn't it? I can't remember. I'm not.
It was in Victoria, Australia. I can't remember,
yeah,
but there was 5 firefighters that were lost in a bushfire. So yeah, they went big on it during that one. So it's May the 4th. Sorry, I just wanted to unpick because people might be thinking in their heads, why May the 4th?
Well, that's the May the 4th one. The other one we've kind of settled on the first Monday in September, so the date actually moves. Where we try to have a service remembrance. It's open to families to come. It's open to anybody to come, to be honest with you. But like everything else, we are, as a trust, now struggling with the cost of that event. It's an expensive event to lay on with the way that we're doing it. And the Board of Trustees have got a conversation to take place in January where they have to make we have some choices and we have to make some decisions.
Has it got any entrepreneurial people? I know you're one of them because even though you're aversion to technology, you actually got the online book of remembrance is kind of your project, isn't it? And we'll talk about that in a minute. But has it explored ways? I'm sure it's explored many ways. I'm not trying to be the person that tries to recommend things condescendingly, but what ways is there for it to sustain itself beyond asking for more contribution? I mean, again, if the ministers and the members of sort of politics are willing to stand there and clap for us, I'm sure some contribution to the thing that actually remembers it wouldn't go amiss. But aside from more government funding, what other ways have we considered trying to draw funding other than awareness and stuff like this?
Our next board meeting is dedicated to a complete day to discuss exactly that.
Okay.
Because I don't have answers to give you now, but
No.
we have to find more ways. What we've done so far has worked so far for us.
Okay. Yeah.
But we have also reached a time where we are running out of space to put names on the memorial in London.
Mhm.
And our memorial garden at the Arboretum is desperately in need of re-landscaping and changes, and those are going to be significant sums of money.
Yeah.
So I guess we've been able
Is there any reason it doesn't, and again, I'm not trying to get into the next meeting, but like joining forces with other fire and rescue service bodies, but you also don't want it to become politicized or diluted into any particular union or any particular charity. It really does and should stand without any other clouded purpose. It should be enough of a recognition in itself. But these are real world challenges. Finance is difficult.
They are real world challenges. We work very hard not to have any conflict or detrimental influence on the likes of the Firefighters charity.
Mhm.
We work very closely with them. We wouldn't want to run any initiatives that impact with them.
Mhm.
We would love it if we could come up with a scheme, and we are looking at schemes at the moment of
Are you
whether
aware of the Blue Light Foundation?
I am aware of the Blue Light Foundation, but it's not one that we've had a conversation with.
I have a lot of conversations with them, and they give large sums of money predominantly to the police and the military, but they were at the Emergency Services Show again this year, and they're looking to get more involved in fire. They're supporting a couple of the causes, 9/11 stair climb that we're doing next year, and a couple of other things. But anyway, I don't want to get into that.
We would love to do that. We would love stations if they could adopt us as a chosen charity. We're also going to be looking at a scheme
Controversial.
where we're
There's other charities that want to be involved. I don't disagree with you, mate, but
yeah. It's trying to answer your question, we're going to look at everything. We need to look at everything, including, is there a scheme which would allow each serving member of the fire service to give £1 a month or whatever into our pockets? A very, very small amount which wouldn't impact on anybody, but is there a vehicle that would allow that to happen? Our chairman, Colin Livett, is planning to do a motorcycle ride around the country, and he's going to be looking to try and get some of the
I think I saw that motorbike, didn't I?
Yes, you did. He has
Beautiful,
a very nice painted Harley Davidson.
Yeah, funded by himself. I will just put in there, just so people don't get
100%
don't get sensitive, but they're not taking liberties.
He's looking to do a ride of some sort. No decisions made what, but with the support of the various motorcycle fire service affiliated motorcycle groups there are around the country. Early stages, but we see 2026 as a very important year for us to devise other ways to bring income in.
I'm sure they'll be doing a lot of awareness about it, but I will pause there for a second and just ask you if you can provide me with an email address for him, and I will just shout out to people if their stations would like to facilitate an event to meet him, I imagine, and some people on an evening to give a donation to the Memorial Trust. I imagine I'm not speaking out of turn to say that there would be an appetite for that if people wanted to send an expression of interest.
Absolutely, and I'll talk to you about that. And
talk about that afterwards. We'll put some detail in below if people check the notes. Talk to me about the online book of remembrance.
So the online book of remembrance was an initiative I came up with some years back, and we had an online book of remembrance, and then the company that hosted it went bust overnight, or closed down overnight. They didn't go bust. Let me correct myself. The leading person in the organisation sadly passed away, but overnight the servers were switched off without any notice and lost the book completely. Everything had to start from scratch. Fortunately,
How long did you scream for about that?
long time.
I'll bet.
The Firefighters charity also used the same company, and they also lost they had a different style of book,
Oh, God.
but they lost theirs.
Yeah.
So
You know, data needs to exist in 3 places, otherwise it doesn't exist at all.
Absolutely.
That was something I was taught a long time ago. There's 2 hard drives that plug into all of this stuff, and all of it also goes up to a server that's somewhere else, because technology, by going back to our talk about fire engines for a brief second, it will go wrong at times, folks. You need to have a backup, and something that backs up the backup is just one of them things. But anyway, massive frustration.
We were fortunate that I kept a master of the list, so it didn't affect our awareness of it. So
all of a sudden, the sad person that kept the records is celebrated.
Yes,
definitely.
So I had that, and we've learned from that. We talked about learning earlier on, and we've learned from that. We now have our online book of remembrance up every day of the week, every day of the year. Whoever died on that calendar date is displayed at the front of the book. So at least once a year, one of the people that we commemorate, their name is there for people to see.
Nice.
Other than that, it then becomes a book to which families, researchers, anybody can go to. It's a facility to gain information, but also to give information. So some of the information we have in the book is incomplete, and I can talk to you in a moment, if you like, about the hurdles of researching these names.
Please do. Yeah.
And it's there as a tribute. It's also there if families want to add comments, or if they want to add photograph or anything, they can do so. Not just families, friends of, or whatever. It can put stuff there. So it's a book that's in its infancy. It is growing, and I can tell you more about the next projects if you want me to in a moment. But it's there, and it's used extensively by a range of people. We're finding, particularly researchers.
Talk to me about. Excuse me. Talk to me about other projects that are going on. You teased about it.
The one we've just recently launched, but is still being built. It is 2 parts. One is to recognise all the members of the fire service who were conscripted into or volunteered for military service and died.
That's a big challenge.
It is. And those that died as a result of military service.
Mm-hmm.
So this includes many of the military reservists that existed, especially around the World War I, World War II, and who were called back as part of their contract as being a reservist. There were those that volunteered for, go fight for the colours of the country, etc. And those who, against their will, were conscripted into the service. And I have 3 groups at the moment. One is for the Boer War, one is for World War I, that's the biggest group, and one for World War II. When World War II came around, there were restrictions on who could be conscripted or who could volunteer. But in World War I, it was not regarded as a reserve service for most of the period. So chief fire officers would come in on Monday morning and be told they've lost 5 or 6 of their members into military service, and that basically closed a fire station, etc., etc.
Wow.
So it's a forgotten group, Pete, because although those good folk are probably remembered on a local memorial, particularly World War I and World War II, they are recorded in their military service and their titles. Nobody before has ever collated them together to be a group.
Jesus. So how are you crowdsourcing the nation's knowledge on that one? Because that is a massive task.
Well, it is. It's been
these groups that you've got. How are they being?
The group we found we have just done 10 years worth of research. So 2 or 3 contributors working to find names to put in. There is no central location to go and get this. We have to go to memorials that might be on fire stations. or in the town hall or the village hall.
God. So physically go to them?
Sometimes, or you look for photographs online. One of the most valuable resources has been the National Newspaper Archive. And on a daily basis almost, they are digitizing old newspapers.
Okay.
And they will record names as part of a funeral notice or an obituary, or they were recorded in old copies of Fire magazine and some of the other magazines from the time. And it's really just been a trawling through to try and collect this from a wide knowledge, a collective knowledge of nitwits like myself that, will do research.
You should run your own podcast, mate. Christ, you would have some fascinating stories to give. And we just
build that up.
Yeah.
We just build it up from whatever source we can find. And then what happens is I go in and verify them. And there's a lot of verification can be done by the Commonwealth War Graves Commission because they were recorded there. Some of them we have names, but we don't have details of what regiment they were in. There's lots of routes that don't come up with anything, and what we're looking for, and it's all there on the in the Book of Remembrance. The whole story is there. What we're trying to do, we're asking people to tell us of anybody they know who's died in military service, but were prior to that a member of the fire service, and we will then take up the research. We will then go and do further. I sit for hours. My colleagues sit for hours. I've got two guys in particular that feed into this.
Is it good to shout them out? Would they mind if we acknowledge them publicly?
I probably won't do that at this moment in time.
Fine.
But
that's fine.
Yeah,
that's fine.
But
just a big one for credit if they're happy to get it, but we recognise that they're doing an incredible job.
I'd rather talk to them first. But
you're okay.
But they're it's a joint effort. It's to put that in there, and then I do the final say of it going into the book, and they're there. That's live in the book already. They are there, along with the other group of fire watchers and fire guards. Again, men and women who were not recorded as a group. They were recorded often in the Commonwealth War Graves Commission as part of the official civilian deaths from World War II.
Okay.
But what I've done now is I've grouped them so that they can be recognised as a group. Now, both of those, the two groups will eventually, at the National Memorial Arboretum, will have plaques telling their story. They won't have individual names, but we intend to commemorate what they did and who they were as groups and tell their story. And then the final bit that we're going to do, which should go live by the end of this month or early December, is to try and record all of the memorials that exist around the country of any shape or form that dedicated to the death of a member of the fire service. So, as you go around this country, there are individual memorials that have been put up to commemorate an explosion.
Yep.
Or it could be a very grand statue, one or two of them are, or a monument, right down to a brass plaque that has been put up in a fire station, or in a church that records that their local members of the fire service died. This will include the red plaque scheme that we started on earlier. There will be a dedicated link across to all of that. Nobody's done it before, and I'm determined that we've got to try and record, hopefully with a photograph, any memorial where it refers to a member of the service who has died, because I already know that some of these are in storage because the building they were on has been demolished and put in storage.
That. Yeah.
Now, the serving members of the service can help me, because if they know of somewhere,
I just worry about how many have already been chucked in skips.
That's a worry. It is a worry.
It is a worry.
But Do you know what? There are a lot, Pete, around the country. Some of them
There'll
are
be
in
romantics that have
graveyards.
pulled them out of skips and taken them home, not to steal them, but because it was sacrilege to throw
Yeah,
them away
yeah,
in the first
yeah,
place. So those
yeah.
individuals can share them as well.
Yeah. I mean, some of them are in cemeteries. Some of them were
Yep.
commemorative graves. And people that tended those and looked after them have long gone. And they don't know they exist. And I found some really sad-looking, overgrown, green-covered graves. Maybe, as we go into this, maybe a local station would want to adopt cleaning one up or doing something of that nature. You know, that's another stage of the whole process.
There's a lot of memorial gardens on fire stations, isn't there?
There are. And exactly that. That's the sort of thing we need to capture. We need to record. We need to put a photograph up, and we need to say why we're there. I think it's so important that we acknowledge that in the past, people have seen the value in recording something, have gone out their way to pay tribute to somebody. But decades on, those people have gone, left the service, the families have passed on. And
they say a person dies twice, don't they?
Yeah.
The time they actually die and the last time their name is mentioned. And we, through the beauty of technology and a hell of a lot of effort by you and others, and by the people contributing, we can extend that time horizon. We can keep that alive, hopefully indefinitely, or at least until the internet explodes. Do you know what I mean? And I think that is a remarkably difficult challenge, but one that is deserving of your time and anybody else's. That's huge, mate.
I think, though, this is something that the fire service of today and retired members can own. Because I think, rather than walking past a brass plaque they spot or I remember, they just drop a line to us and say, did you know this one exists? I don't care how many times I get a duplication.
You need an online submission form where they can put, like, what 3 words, location, name, small description, upload a photo if you want to. And then that can be put through to you and the team to validate or whatever. I think that
That's currently being built. And
nice.
when it will be launched shortly, I will make sure you personally get notification of that as well.
Yeah, man, we'll put it out there.
It's one that I honestly believe we are doing something it's never been done before. And I think
we didn't have the tools to do it before, and it requires this is, as much as we are frustrated and think technology is the death of so many things, it can also be the birth of some incredible stuff like this.
Yeah. I mean, wouldn't it be great if all, everybody on a fire station that's got one of these plaques? Because I mean, I can picture a fire station that's got one dedicated to members of the fire service, that fire brigade, as it was, who died, joined the military and died, and they put a brass plaque up in their fire station. They had the sense and the passion to take that plaque down when they moved to a new fire station, and it's up in the new fire station. Now, members of the public generally are not going to see that. It's wonderful that it's there. It's great that somebody that had the sense to capture it and take it with them, and it's in a lovely position. But let's record it. Let's put it up so that it's there for others to see it and know it's there. And I think there are members of the fire service today who could go, well, we got one on our station. We've got a memorial garden. We've built this.
1,000%. 1,000%. Yeah.
Because those guys that built that memorial garden at some point are going to retire. And the ones that come behind them may not understand the purpose and the reason for that.
Mate, you're basically articulating the whole purpose of the podcast in so many ways, because how many firefighters did people speak to, or other first responders, and go, oh, wow, I wish you'd have listened to, like, if I said to you now, who was your first great leader or manager, you give me a name, and you go, you know what, if you could listen to Bob or Sarah or Dave or Big John, and the way they spoke and the way they spoke about such purpose and passion and service and professionalism and discipline and honor when they were in their 30s, But now they've retired and they've died, and you'll half tell the story and you'll remember some of it and you'll bastardize the rest or whatever. And I'm like, if you could hear that person, like in 30, 40, 50 years' time, when perhaps you or other members of the Memorial Trust are no longer with us, if you could go back and listen to that person, I wish I could go back and listen to my great-grandfather speaking when he was in his 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, whatever. You know, we're given that gift now through technology as well. And I just think we've had a number of people on the podcast now, it's been going for about 6 years, who have passed away. And I think, wow, that their generations of their family will be able to go back and hear their voice. What a strange and surreal thing to be able to be part of. And you guys and girls are doing exactly that as well on a significantly larger scale. I think it's absolutely incredible, mate. I want to be respectful of our time. We've been recording for like an hour and 45 already, which is no mean feat, but time just absolutely goes away when we're passionate about these topics. If I could force you into a corner, and feel free to say no, but just as an example, as one example, not a favorite, but just as an example, take us down a brief story of one of 1,000 examples of firefighters that we've lost. Give us an example just to encourage people to go over and take a look at the online book of remembrance and the Firefighters Memorial Trust.org.uk. Give us something that they might find there.
That's a very difficult one, Pete. I've got to be honest with you, I'm not prepared. I don't have that. I don't have that there because, and I mean this genuinely, every one of those names for me has exactly the same meaning as all the other names in there. And I've got, over the years, I've been doing this because I've been researching and signing off the names that go in the book and on the memorial now since 2003. And I get to personally know these guys. I find a personal thing with them. I love it when I find a missing piece of information. If you go into our book now, there will be some that are just a name. I don't have any other details. Frustratingly, Pete, I have names of members of the service that have died in the 80s and 90s, and I don't have details.
Really? As recent as that?
And the service don't have details. Now, one of the problems we've got is the criteria we use as died in the course of their duties may not match what the service at the time regarded as on duty. Let me give you an example. If you were a firefighter, and the way that detached duties worked in your outfit was that if you were you had to go to your parent station, pick up your kit, and drive to the station you're going to do a night shift with, because that happened with some, right? A detached duty. The time that person is driving from their normal parent station to the station they're going to do their duties, that person is on duty. And if they have a road accident, and I have some of those, that person died in the course of the duty. Because the only reason they died in that road accident at 6:30 that evening was because they were travelling to provide cover at another fire station. Wow. In terms of pension terms, it isn't always regarded as being an on-duty death.
Really?
So it doesn't get flagged up as somebody that died holding a branch when the wall fell on them, to be crude. All right. So the trust suggests that there are people that die in the course of their duties, but those duties may be doing something different to somebody that's died at a fire. If somebody dies on a fire station through natural causes, or anybody dies on we have a number of people that died on a fire station through natural. If the coroner attributes that death to a fire service activity that occurred an hour before or the day before, then that person, as far as the trust is concerned, has died in the course of their duties as a result of their duties. It's quite complex, Pete, the criteria we have to work to.
You know, one thing I love about the book, though, as well, is when you go on it, and I pulled it up now, it tells you the day. as well. So firefighters who died on this day.
Yes.
As an example for transparency, we're recording on the 12th of November, 1944. Fireman National Fire Service Harold Anderson, Alfred Capes, fire watcher, Fife Downs. All of these people, Albert Fairclough, they are all died on the 12th of November, 1940, 1904, 1944. I think that is a fantastic feature of it, where it gives you that opportunity to go on there every day if you want to and just recognize people and see and hear some of their story. That's a fantastic feature. I'd forgotten to mention it earlier. It's only when I pulled it up now.
And do you know what you've just done? You have just made the hairs on the back of my neck and my arms stand up.
Yeah.
As you read that, even though I know it's there, when you read that out, because it fits in with what you said, people can die twice unless you remember their name. Mm-hmm. And that's what we've got to do. We've got to remember the names of these people, and we've got to find even new ways of doing that. What we've got at the moment is a book that I devised out of my head, my simple thinking about how it could look.
But no, it's great, mate.
We need to build on it. And what I'd like people to do is to go, that date is wrong. That person died in this road, because sometimes I don't have a location of death, particularly during World War II. Mm-hmm. But family members or local records might show that they died at Central Railway Station X, and then the beauty of the digital book is we can go in and change that, and we can add the details to it. So people can help me by looking at deaths in their area, because the book is searchable, as you know. You could put in, you want to know how many people have died in a particular
name,
service.
You can put in anything.
And
but
then
you're
you
right,
can
filling in those
gaps.
Yeah.
And
you can go on the names to be added. So there's an element that people can look at that's currently under research. So as an example, exactly as you just said, John Edwards, leading fireman from Clerkenwell, 23rd of January 1974, killed in a road accident while travelling to a standby duty at Kentish Town Fire Station. Question is, was this an on-duty movement?
Right.
Do you know what I mean? Unverified Johnston, unknown rank, Lancashire, 28th of October 1989, taken ill whilst travelling between stations. All of this is just, Jesus, man. It is absolutely incredible. People can go on here, they can look at the listings from fire authority, service category, whether an auxiliary fire service, death in the military, a fire guard, a fire watcher, insurance fire brigades, military, national fire service, police fire brigades, salvage corps. It is just, you could spend days looking through this. It is such an incredible piece of work. I do
sometimes.
I know you do. But it's such an incredible piece of work, mate. And it takes just a remarkably heavy lift to keep all of this going. Anyway, I dragged us back down that rabbit hole. For people that want to go and find out some more information, they'll just look under here. You'll see the links. So let's recall ourselves back, Alan. So pushing people first and foremost, Firefighters Memorial Trust.org.uk. Go and take a look there. Motorcycle. If you've got interest in supporting, being part of, getting some more awareness on that, we'll provide an email address below as well. We'll provide a LinkedIn link to yourself, Alan, or would you prefer an email, or would you prefer they go straight to the website? What's the best way for people to get in contact with yourself and
the best way to do that is to do it through the website, because I'm listed there under the archivist, and come straight through to me on that. So that's
so if they go that and they click to the contact detail on the top right, there's the archivist at firefightersmemorial.org.uk. Alan's listed there, and then there's a general inquiries for the admin as well. Dude, I'm going to have a couple of follow-ups with you privately, because I've just like the debriefs and the incidents and the historical references. I'd love to have you back on at some point. I'm sure there's some other topics we could get down in some more compressed versions, 20, 30-minute conversations around some really pivotal things that I think would continue to draw work to the great work of the Firefighters Memorial Trust, yourself and many others that are involved. You know, we want to reference that there is a lot of people that are involved in this. It's not just a little passion project of your own. There's a great number of people that need to be recognised. If people want to go on the website, they can see all of the people and patrons that are involved in this, the trustees, the officers. It's a big movement of people, mate. I really, really appreciate your time today, brother, and I look forward to catching up with you again soon.
Yeah, anytime, Pete. It's been a pleasure. Thanks very much indeed.
My friend.
Well, that's it for today, folks. Hope you took a lot away from that episode. We started the Firefighters podcast to develop, inspire, connect, motivate, represent, and most importantly, celebrate the world of incredible emergency services operators and the wider sector through this series of wide-ranging conversations. We really love creating this podcast and bringing it to so many people. Did you know you can also find these on YouTube? We do a lot of video podcasts now. You can head over to our YouTube page and follow, subscribe there. And as a final ask from us, whatever platform you're on, please rate the podcast. It really helps us as a key performance indicator to reach more and more people. I've been your host, Pete Wakefield. This has been the Firefighters Podcast. And wherever you are in the world, please stay safe, be happy, live with intention, and where possible, please remember and support your firefighters and first responders. I'll see you next time.